Welcome back to Sunrise. Hot topics now, and Coles will ban the sale of kitchen knives in supermarkets across the country after one of its staff was stabbed, allegedly by a 13-year-old in Queensland. Knives will be available until next Tuesday, but after that they'll be withdrawn from shelves completely, pending a safety review. It's understood Woolworths won't be following Coles in making the change. For their take, let's bring in Perth Lord Mayor Basil Zempilas and the founding director of Western Sydney Women, Amanda Rose. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Baz, what do you think about this? A good move from Coles?
Well, it's disappointing, I think, that, in this day and age, we have to resort to taking something that you would expect to find at your supermarket and have been able to find at your supermarket off the shelves. I suppose when you look at them like that, they are weapons and can be used if somebody decides to do the wrong thing with them. They can be used for harm. But you could say that about oranges as well. I mean, if somebody wanted to grab some oranges and start throwing them at somebody from short range, they could cause severe damage as well. Perhaps because they are weapons, they could be kept behind some cabinet. But frankly, it's just disappointing that this is where we are at in Australia in 2025.
It is disappointing, but it also is, the situation, isn't it? It's a realistic situation, Amanda Rose, that we are in. And, we can make light of the fact that, you can use another object in the supermarket as a weapon, but ultimately the injuries this woman sustained, it could have taken her life.
Absolutely. And I think we need to look at the reason why this is happening. A lot of people, it's a lot of effort to do that. So what is happening in society? The 13-year-old has that much aggression and rage and thinks about actually doing this. What are they watching? What is on TikTok? What are computer games showing you? So I think we need to be looking at that, because what happens is people say, look, they've got a problem, we need to look after them. Okay, yes, they have a problem, but how did they get to that? What was the circumstance? Because if one person doesn't, then potentially others are doing it. And I think people don't want to do the hard stuff, which is saying, sorry, stop watching that computer game, or ban the computer games that have violence in them, where people are being stabbed in them for fun, because young children will just replicate it.
Well, that's, the much wider and huge issue of youth crime right across this country. I think what would be good to see is a consensus across all of the supermarkets. We saw some changes after what happened in Bondi and Sydney as well. So we'll see what happens there with what Woolworths do as well in the future. Moving on, India's cricket team is doing some much-needed soul-searching after their 3-1 loss against Australia in the Summer Test Series. Now, the Board of Control for Cricket in India thinks it knows why they lost. Not because of the players, not because of their form. It was the wives. It was their fault. Apparently, the presence of wives and even children on the tour is being seen as a distraction, with cricket authorities now expected to limit the time spouses can be present, just a few weeks of a long tour. Basil, can we blame the wives?
When all else fails, when you can no longer take responsibility for your own form, blame somebody else. And I tell you what, they are copping the rough end of the deal here, the players' wives and girlfriends and associated partners. It wasn't that long ago, actually, that Australia had similar sorts of rules in place where the partners were allowed to go for part of the tour but not stay on the tour. Is it a distraction? Well, anybody could be a distraction, a friend or anyone that enters into the bubble. I think, again, sorry to go back to 2025, but I reckon these people are professional cricketers. They should be able to travel with their partners, and it's not their fault. If I get out, it's my fault. Nobody else's.
That's right.
Yeah, well, presumably using this same logic, Amanda, the Australian team thrived because their families and wives were on the tour.
Exactly. What a great example. And this sounds like, sorry, Baz, but it sounds like politics, right? So when someone gets in, all they do is say, oh, it's not our fault, it's their fault, it's someone else's fault, it's this fault. Instead of saying, look at the coaches, look at the players. Why are you blaming the wives? Now, remember, the wives and partners are the ones that supported them while they were training, raised their families while they were training, kept the house going, kept everything going, while having their own careers, a lot of them, mind you, and all of a sudden they're throwing them under the bus. So I hope there's absolute outrage online about this.
And I suspect as Baz runs for the state election in WA that his wife and family, beautiful wife Amy and family, will be on tour with him as well as he
they're
contributes
all along for
to the
ride.
state.
In fact, they're going to help me get elected.
Yeah, I suspect they will. Finally, forget using cabanas to reserve a spot on the beach. There's a new trend. It's dividing the nation this morning. Beachgoers are using Glad wrap to secure beachside gazebos. So they're wrapping it around the columns to stop others using that space. Wollongong Council, this is happening so often, they've actually made up signs to say it's prohibited. Amanda, it's un-Australian.
It is so sad. Do what we used to do growing up. You get there at the crack of dawn, you bring some colouring in pens. I mean, even these days they've got iPads to play on, and you wait. And if you want to, you know, reserve it, you've got to sit there and hold it and use it. I would just go in and cut that thing clean off and go and use it myself if I was there. The council needs to put in, if it's in demand, put in, you know, a booking system so people can use it 2 hours at a time, but then you have to manage that. But this is just shocking. And there are young families that might want to come and sit down, you know, and because it's free, they bring their own food. But this, I think it's horrendous.
It's a rite of passage, isn't it, Baz? I'm sure you've done it. You've gone down to the park early, you set up the, you know, the plates, the barbecue, the decorations, the bunting, and then the family comes later for the party.
Pretty simple rule here in Australia. It is called occupying the crease. So if you want the best spot at the beach, the best spot at the concert, or you want your tickets on AFL Grand Final Day, you've just got to get in the queue, commit to it and stay there. This is not allowed. That is un-Australian behaviour. You've summed it up. Out they go. And all that Glad wrap, what a waste.
I know, it is a waste. We hope they're reusing it for the potato salad at the end. Amanda and Baz, thank you so much for that. We'll speak to you next week. Here's David.
Thanks, Eddie.